Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to Scoop and Living. Today's a pretty quick project. We're going to be working on what I call a tuffle. It's kind of a half of a tote bag and half of a duffel bag. So you can tell it's a nice big open top tote bag to hold a lot of things. But if you want it to be a little more secure, or if you move it around a lot, it has this lid that pulls out from the inside with a zipper that goes right across the top. And so now it's more of a duffel bag that looks like a tote bag. But when you want to have access to it, instead of the duffel bag that has the edges, this gets pushed down inside like that, and you have your easy access tote bag that has the full opening. Also has a little pocket up front right here. Depends on how efficient you are at sewing. It only takes you about 30 minutes to an hour. So let's just get into how we make this thing. I have three cutouts, three plastic cutouts, and this does most of my design for me. I have one, which is the pocket, and so that's the little front part on here. That's 7 inches from top to bottom. The top edge is 9 inches and 5/8, and the bottom is 10 inches and 5/8. So the way I made this template is just make a straight line, measure out half of 10 and 5/8 and 9 and 5/8 at 7 inches, and that gives you your outside points, and then you just connect those, and that makes that trapezoid. Then we're going to need two pieces that are 13 inches by 29 inches, and this is going to be the upper section. So whatever color you want to be the upper section, you're going to need two of them being this size. On my template I also have the strap placement drawn in on here, and so the bottom is 9.5 inches from the edge to the edge of the strap on both sides, and so then this tuffle pocket just sits right on there like that, and you can see that the seams overlap, which lets one seam attach both of those. Then at the top it's 10.5 inches to go right there. And then you're also going to need one 19 by 29 inch piece, and that's this dark one on the bottom. I tend to do dark colors just so when you set it on the ground it doesn't get quite so dirty. So you're going to need two straps. Each one of those needs to be 46 inches long. And then you need 1/2 of a zipper. So I get mine in the roll, so what I do is I measure out the length, cut it, and then peel those apart, and I only need one piece for this tuffle, and that way I usually make two at a time, just a little more expeditious that way. And then this lid piece right here is 6 inches by 59 inches, so you're going to need one of those as well. So let's just get into cutting these, and then you can see the process of how I go about sewing everything together. The reason I like using these plastic templates is I can just use my rotary cutter and roll along the edges, and that way I don't need to trace out and then cut. I can just put my pattern on there and cut them right out using that. So the first step in making these bags is I'm going to take the nice side of the zipper, line that up with the nice side of the lid, and about halfway on the width of the zipper I'll put a seam all the way down the length, attaching those two pieces together. The next step is going to be making it so the zipper lays flat. So I'll lay the zipper flat and fold over the lid piece, and then I'm going to run a seam just on the outside of the seam that I already ran, and that'll keep a nice flat zipper and keeping that blue lid from getting in the way. Next up is the pocket. So I'm going to fold over the top edge of the pocket just about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, and then run a seam down the length of that. That'll be a nice finished edge on the top of the pocket. This stage is when I put my little tag on there. If you don't have a tag, then you can skip this step. Alright, next step is going to sew the handles onto those straps. So we'll just take the straps, fold them in half, and then I like to put a clip on there, it just holds the space so I know where to attach the handles. Then we'll grab some small pieces. I like to use the bottom color, it just gives a good balance of color to the bag. And then these ones are 4.5 inches by 6 inches. And And so I'll clip one edge, and then we're just going to roll those down, trying to keep those edges nice and level with each other. That just gives a nice clean handle. From there, we're just going to put one stitch right down it, and that'll keep that on the strap itself. Now that all the smaller pieces are assembled, it's time to start getting the bag ready for assembly. So now I'm marking the top and bottom of the strap locations. I told you those measurements earlier, 9.5 on the bottom, 10.5 on the top. Once the layout's done on both side panels, then I'll take the pocket and line that up. It'll overhang a little bit from the marks that you just did, so just center it. And then I'll run a stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the pocket and the bottom of that side panel, just to hold those two pieces together. Now we're going to be attaching the strap to the sides of the panels of the bag. So we're going to make sure that the clean side of the handle is up and line up our strap on the outside of that mark. And we're going to run a seam all the way along one edge of that strap, and so that'll bind the pocket into the side panel as well. So we're going to go all the way down one side of that strap until we get about 1.5 inches from the end. Then we're going to turn around and go all the way back down again. It makes a nice strong connection between the strap and the bag. Once both side panels are done, now it's time to attach those both to the base. So I'll just line up that bottom edge of the side, and put a seam about 1/2 inch from the edge of that. And so that's going to run along the whole bottom of that side panel. Once you're done with one, go ahead and spin it around and do the same thing on the other side panel. Make sure you tuck that handle in though, because it's a pain in the butt if you sew in that by accident. Now we're going to put another seam down this to keep that previous seam flat. It also gives a little more strength to the bag. Now it's time to turn this flat panel into a bag. So I'm going to be putting a 1/2 inch seam down both sides of it, making sure that that previous seam that I have lines up with each other. It just makes the bag look a whole lot nicer when those two seams line up. Now that we have the seams on the sides made, we're going to square off that bottom. So I'm marking the bottom so I can see where to line up the seams in order to give that square shape. Now I can open the bag just a little bit, and that allows me to line up the mark I just made on the bottom of the bag with the seam going up the side. So I'll use my fingers and line those two up. Then I can lay that flat onto the table, and I will put a line perpendicular to that side seam, and that'll be what the bottom edge of the bag becomes. Then I'll run a seam right along that line. Once you've made triangles on both ends of the bag, go ahead and take a rotary cutter or scissors and cut about 1/4 inch from the seam, and that'll be the bottom edge of your bag. For the final bit of assembly, you start by flipping the zipper right side out, and then you're going to line up the nice sides of the bag and the nice sides of the zipper, and using clips you're going to go all the way around the outside of the bag, lining up the two top edges. Then go ahead and put a seam about 3/8 of an inch down from the top of the bag all the way around, making sure that you don't get those straps stuck in between this seam. Now is the first time we're going to be able to see what the bag is going to look like, so go ahead and turn it right side out. Once it's right side out, tuck the zipper panel inside the bag and go ahead and roll the top pieces with your fingertips, getting that seam as tight as you can and clipping that all the way around. Once they're all clipped, then you're going to start on one of the straps, and you're going to put one more seam about 1/8 of an inch down from the top of the bag, going all the way around, and that'll give you a nice clean edge to the top of your bag. So now that you have that outside stitch on the top, this bag is done. So you can go ahead and put whatever you want in there. I found it can fit multiple pillows if you're going on a road trip, blankets, ski gear, whatever it is. Great for road trips. You can make a bunch of these. Each one of these has a sealable lid, so you can just throw them around and just put them in the car or the boat or whatever you need. Great for picnics, great for going out. My wife and I have loved these bags. Usually if we go on a day of skiing, we'll split out the whole day's worth of stuff. So we'll put the clothes we're going to put on when we get there in one bag, the clothes we're going to change into when we get back out in another bag, and then snacks and other things in another bag. But it's just a great thing to have around, a bunch of them. You keep them all different colors, then you know which one is which. Well, that's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.